always have a support structure that you can rely on, having people that can always deliver, and at the very least, those that can show progress on a daily basis.
Kita adalah brand holder. Kita kena yakin dengan brand kita. So sebelum kita nak meyakinkan orang dengan brand kita kena yakinkan diri kita dahulu. So macam mana? Ilmu, knowledge. Pergi belajar. Tak belajar, tak tahu. Saya buka syarikat saya sendiri sebab masa itu saya yakin masyarakat tak boleh bergerak tanpa motivasi.
புதுசாக வித்தியாசமாக நீங்கள் யோசித்து ஒரு மார்க்கெட்டில் டிமாண்டாக இருக்கிற ப்ராடக்ட்டை நீங்கள் கொண்டு வந்தீங்கன்னா பயணியராகவும் ஆகலாம். அதே சமயத்தில் மக்கள் திருப்பி வந்து உங்கள்கிட்ட வாங்கிட்டு இருப்பாங்க.
把你的生意放上网络平台，我朋友是做网络卖衣服的生意，他的生意是不断的在增长。我起步的时候是跟去银行贷款，所以他说我的规模也是太小，所以他是不接受我的贷款的。有一天我上网寻找贷款，等下过后就找到 IMSME， 过后我去 click 进去申请表格。第二天 CGC 的有一个顾问打来跟我说，你可以尝试用 P2P 的平台，过后就成功了。
The great thing about this whole CGC ISME program is that it's no collateral and you can go for as little as 1,000 ringgit to as much as 5 million. I went online and went to the page, registered, logged in, and just keyed in my details. And from there, within a matter of days, things were already set in motion. So it's really that straightforward and that simple. I was able to get it within a matter of weeks. I think everyone can too.
IMSME ஃபண்ட் வந்து நாங்கள் வந்து அப்ளை பண்ணியிருந்தோம், எங்களுக்கு கிடச்சிச்சு. அது மூலிமா எங்கள் பிஸ்னஸையும் வந்து எக்ஸ்பேண்ட் பண்ணோம். 10% வந்து இன்க்ரீஸ் பண்ணோம் எங்கள் சேல்ஸை. இது மூலிமா IMSME ஃபண்ட் வந்து ரொம்ப உதவியாக இருந்துச்சு எங்களுக்கு.
Sebenarnya dalam business, fun is everything. You have fun, you can go bigger. You don't have fun, you cannot go anywhere. CGC banyak membantu saya untuk saya go and move further sebenarnya. Dan at the end, saya dah ada branch baru dekat Alustah selepas saya dapat dana daripada CGC. I have no fun problem at all after that. Jadi dengan IMSME memang banyak sangat ubah hidup saya dan banyak membantu mengembangkan bisnes saya.
感谢 IMSME 帮我的生意更上一层楼。
Office. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 560 registrations for today, and right now we have 213 people on board. I'm believing that we will have more participants coming in as we go towards the second half of the program. We have participants from Bangladesh, we have participants from Turkey, we have participants from Qatar, Sri Lanka, India, Singapore, Philippines, pretty much across the world. We also have some from Zambia as well as South Africa as well, right? So it's a good mixture of Malaysians and international participation today. And we are excited today because our second half of the day is going to continue with the experience sharing from Ms. Namita Vikas from India, as well as Mr. Coskun Kanberoğlu from Turkey. Now, we have, through ADFIM, have had discussions and we are pursuing collaborations with auctusESG. Now, auctusESG, ladies and gentlemen, is an expert advisory and enabling firm, which stands at the intersection of finance, investment, and sustainability. With a quest to accelerate global sustainable finance and climate transition, the firm enables holistic financial solutions to climate change by facilitating businesses to allocate capital more sustainably and encouraging investors to reward companies that take climate change seriously. Now, auctusESG has had experiences across the world as well, whether it be in India as well as in the continent of Africa. I believe Ms. Namita Vikas, who will be our presenter today, will be sharing more on their experiences there as well. We have today Ms. Namita Vikas, who will speak on sustainable finance and ESG, India. Namita Vikas is the founder and managing partner of auctusESG LLP and global board member of Climate Bonds Initiative, United Kingdom. A senior business leader with over 30 years of diverse global experience in climate change strategy and sustainability across sectors including banking, technology, and FMCG. Namita comes with an illustrious experience covering sustainable finance, ESG risk management, climate strategy, and disclosure. She is ranked as one of the leading women in business sustainability by the prestigious WBCSD and was globally recognized as Sustainability Leader of the Year by Ethical Cooperation UK. So we are very fortunate to have Ms. Namita Vikas today with us. Namita has introduced responsible banking to India, raised over $1 billion in capital and credit lines towards mainstream green finance, and issued India's first green bond in 2015. She is one of the architects of United Nations Principles for Responsible Banking and served as chairperson and member of global advisory bodies like the United Nations Environment Program, Finance Initiative, UNEPFI, United Nations Natural Capital Finance Alliance, and International Capital Markets Associations. She is a prominent speaker at the United Nations General Assembly and G20 on climate risk and sustainable finance. So we are very fortunate to have Ms. Namita Vikas with us to share her experience as well as her learnings through her years of service. So we welcome Ms. Namita Vikas to the stage.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Hanif, and thank you very much to AFIM for inviting me to share my perspectives. Like you said, I would like to focus on sustainable finance and ESG. I will bring in, some of my experiences, but before that, a little bit of context setting, and I don't know if I'm going to be a little repetitive, but please bear with me if I am. Many recent developments in the world around resource usage, climate change, increasing income inequalities, business impact on environment and society have propelled sustainability and ESG conversations within financial institutions and business community. So if 3 years back, I would have said ESG, I would have to decode it by saying environment, social governance considerations. No more today, ESG is understood. The recent pandemic has brought forward the pertinent role of actors like policymakers, industry, financiers, to consider speedy acceleration of sustainable and climate policies, strategies, and financial solutions towards smooth transition of a sustainable global economy. And sustainable finance or ESG has made a sudden emergence to the forefront. So the last 17 months of unprecedented global health and economic crisis has attributed heightened importance to ESG by corporations, financial institutions, society in general, and governments, of course. The early 2020, the ESG landscape looked very different. So when I stepped down from my position with one of the fourth largest private sector banks in India last year in June 2020, I thought I was ahead of time to launch auctusESG. But it seems that the progress in global ESG initiatives could not have been undermined by the impact of COVID, which has also led to companies struggling to sustain their commitment to ESG principles and practices. But that is not the case today. As 2020 progressed into 2021, the world has realized just how integrated economic outcomes were with environment and society. And there are newer challenges or newer crises that have been faced by participants within the economy, and that has brought health, financials, and operational headwinds, the likes of which have been never experienced before. So this extreme environment only intensified the focus on issues of sustainability and has served to accelerate the existing ESG trends. Over the next 40 minutes, I will cover sustainable finance and ESG, like Hanif mentioned, talking about broadly the global developments, the changing global business risks, impact of COVID, concepts of sustainable finance and ESG, and disclosures, which is absolutely very important. And another aspect of how DFIs today are facing the kind of challenges, what are the opportunities in the road ahead? So that's going to be all about the slides here. A very quick look at some historic data. So the evolution of climate change goes back to 1972 with the UN Conference on Human Environment, where multi-actors, including governments, private sector, and NGOs, came together to focus on human interactions with the environment. Then, of course, the Brundtland Commission that coined and defined the meaning of sustainable development, followed by IPCC, Rio Earth Summit, the Kyoto Protocol, the Earth Charter in 2020, which was like an international declaration of fundamental values and principles considered useful by its supporters for building a just, sustainable, and a peaceful global society in the 21st century. But I think what was historic was the announcement and the adoption of the Sustainable Development Goals in 2050. 195 nations adopted the SDGs, or the global goals for 2030 developmental agenda, and that reflected continuity and consolidation of the Millennium Development Goals. Then immediately came the COP21, was another landmark moment in the history of climate change, where 190 countries signed the Paris Agreement, submitted their nationally determined contributions to reduce climate impact. The Paris Accord required countries to set their own voluntary targets for reduction in GHG emissions, such as carbon dioxide, combating temperature rise, climate change impacts. But I think what is very important to note is that through NDCs, the Paris Agreement requires all signatories, that is all countries, to be legally bound by the Universal Action on Climate Change. So it is not just a voluntary sign up, but there are legalities and a legal binding around what commitments have been made. All this has, and the incidences of the past that we've been seeing, immediate past, that has shocked climate scientists across the world. We've seen how vulnerable the world is towards climate risks. The deadly heat waves in US, Canada going up to 49 degrees, or floods in several Asian countries, as well as Europe and UK, which have disrupted businesses, supply chains, and have raised fears of human-caused climate disruption that is making extreme weather even worse than what was predicted. And this is also negatively impacting all parameters of environment and social bounds. So may it be livelihoods, burdens of loans, that is creating more indebtedness amongst the poor who are going below the poverty line further, right? And then to top it up is COVID, which has also led to an urgency and increased focus around building a need for immediate action to tackle climate change, resulting in laying a strong foundation for enhanced cooperation. And that is seen with the 2021 Leaders Climate Summit, which was convened by President Joe Biden, which brought 40 leaders from across the world to urge global cooperation on climate change and announced ambitious targets. China, the world's top emitter, vowed to join the Kagagali Amendment, strengthening not only the control on non-CO2 GHG gases, but strictly contain and reduce the coal consumption. Similarly, Japan increased its emission cutting targets by 20% and pledged to curb emissions by almost 46% by 2030. I think all this is demonstrating a step by major contributors to the world's GDP taking charge and demonstrating their commitment to reducing emissions. And as many countries look to rebuild their economies, major emphasis is being laid on building back better through green recovery, which we are going to see at the UN COP26, where the focus is on adaptation, mitigation, collaboration, and mobilizing finance for climate action. So moving on to certain select markets, I wanted to put up this slide from an NDC perspective just to show what kind of opportunity the world is looking at. So for DFIs, mapping investments and lending against NDCs of countries has become an important element or a very interesting opportunity of contributing not only towards climate change, but also to increase or create a stable and a balanced balance sheet. And this slide summarizes a comparison between the commitments that have been made by several emerging markets. There is no doubt that the adverse impacts of climate change will affect large proportions of the world population, especially in South Asia, which is home to over 25% of the world population. And the vulnerability of the region is even greater because 33% of the world's poor live in this region. Commitments differ because of their geographical characteristics, as well as the demographic, political, social, and economic characteristics that are there. Therefore, each country defines its own pledge, targets, and contributions, and that is what is very important. It is not about emulating anybody, but it is about what your own country needs to up. And if you look at India, for example, the NDC's commitments included, the first three targets were 33 to 35% reduction in emission intensity of the GDP by 2030, an increase in the share of non-fossil fuel sources to 40% of the energy capacity, and creating an additional carbon sink of almost 2.5 to 3 gigatons of CO2 equivalent through biodiversity and afforestation interventions. And all these targets are effectively being complemented through subsidy reforms and the rapid scaling of energy access with strong political commitment and regulatory environment, for example, for energy transition. Additionally, in India, we have now announced the a new DFI for infrastructure, which would eventually look at scaling up finance for climate smart infra projects, backed by credit enhancements to reduce risk and mobilize greater amounts of private capital. Moreover, anti-coal activism, only yesterday, 2 days back, Wall Street Journal brought out a very interesting article on how banks are exiting and how this whole anti-coal activism and international pressure to phase out coal has resulted in reduction of investments in terms of gigawatt capacity by almost 80% in 2020 in countries like India, China, and other Southeast Asian countries that account for nearly 90% of the approved coal projects. So there is clearly a transition that is being seen as we are moving from 2019 to 2020 to 2021. On the next slide is a pictorial presentation, and these timelines show when India entered the various sustainable development initiatives, and India addressed this in 2008 through the National Action Plan for Climate Change, which included 8 missions addressing specific climate issues like solar, water, forest cover, amongst others. In 2014, I think this is very important, India announced the world's first ever CSR mandate, corporate social responsibility mandate, for listed entities to spend 2% of their 3 years average net profits towards creating large-scale positive impact projects and bringing in a kind of market standardization on reporting on businesses' non-financial performances. And in line with those disclosures, earlier our market regulator this year also announced disclosure requirements that mandates top 1,000 listed companies to disclose material ESG risks and opportunities. So it's not just about risks disclosure, but it's also opportunities, the financial implications, and their approach to mitigate or adapt to these risks. And I believe this is a very big step that would now enable financial institutions, banks, having worked with a bank and been involved in these processes, to better access ESG and climate-related risks data of the companies that one is investing in or where capital is flowing. And over time, we've seen how India has also progressed on many policy reforms towards cleaner environment, enhancing livelihoods, job creation to address sustainable development and the recent pandemic demand. So on the economic development front, initiatives linked to financial inclusion, doubling farm incomes, on social development linking to women empowerment. I think that is a big topic today. Gender equality and social inclusion are two big topics that everybody is grappling with, especially with women being massively hit as far as the pandemic is concerned, or environmental development through policy enablement towards particularly renewable energy, spearheading the International Solar Alliance and launching this whole initiative on energy efficiency, where programs were created to promote LED use of street lighting, etc. I think those are the kind of thrusts or the push that the policies are being giving to financiers or to companies. I think one very important point here is, and this is a little different story that I want to give you here, is the e-mobility agenda is largely increasing as far as the Indian markets are concerned, and will surely ensure some kind of a holistic transition. So with policies around e-mobility, I think what this has really triggered an e-mobility market where not only major auto players, auto manufacturers are participating in building e-vehicles, but also cab hailing companies like Ola or Grab in Malaysia or Uber equivalent are now manufacturing and selling electric scooters. And in case of the Indian Uber equivalent, Ola received over 100,000 reservations within the first 24 hours, making it the most pre-booked scooter in the world. So that is the kind of market opportunity that I'm talking about because of the whole environment that is helping climate action. Okay, a very quick look at what are the top risks globally moving towards the ESG aspects. And there is an evolving focus on finding out how, when, and by how much will risks impact economies. And the World Economic Forum Global Risk Report 2021 provides a very comprehensive perspective on the major threats that may impact global prosperity in 2021 and over the next decade. So on the screen, the report gives a ranking of major risks in terms of impact and livelihood. And this survey has been taken by 800 global experts and decision makers. And what it is demonstrating is that 6 out of 7 global risks by impact and the top 5 global risks by likelihood are ESG related. I think we have to look at the changing business risks in terms of impact. Infectious diseases are in the top spot, displacing climate change. And this is quite predictable given that the world was brought down onto its knees. What is important is the pandemic got triggered. It triggered a huge economic crisis, and governments and businesses, households had to balance health imperatives against the economic fallout. However, against this backdrop, it will be very unwise to view environmental and social risks as lesser threat. With melting permafrost increasing the geographical spread of tropical pathogens because of warming, infectious diseases are going to be bigger threat because of climate change. And the extreme heat waves, destruction of natural ecosystems are translating this into higher environmental risks for economies. And then that translates down to banks and financial institutions, which are also looking at deploying capital. So this is sitting as a big risk that needs to be taken into consideration. And if you look at the trends, we've seen, so for example, according to the International Monetary Fund, adverse consequences of climate change are concentrated in regions with relatively hot climates, where disproportionately large number of low-income countries are located. And for Asia, what is key to understanding the region's exposure and the vulnerability to climate change impacts is that its population is increasingly urbanized and coastal. If you look at all this threatens businesses and sustainability risks today are no longer any different from financial risks or market, operational, legal, compliance, reputational, political, or investor risks that have always been prioritized by business. And particularly in the context of industrialization, we've seen how Volkswagen, the planting of the defeat device and changing of the emissions performance led the company to make financial losses of not only 2.5 billion euros, but up till now, they have almost paid $30 billion in fines, penalties, restitutions, and settlements of lawsuits. And this has a large impact on the balance sheet of the company. So this is a classic example of how lack of governance and complete environmental disregard or greenwashing in disclosures has led or has risked the entire existence of a good automotive company that is doing well before this whole scandal hit the market, right? So I think these are some of the aspects that need to be looked at. So in a sense, sustainability is emerging as a competitive strategy for businesses and for FIs. It is important to look at multiple aspects like water, energy, governance issues, gender equality, workplace safety, etc. And these issues, which were once considered from a long-term perspective, have transitioned to become short to medium-term priorities, transforming the entire market dynamics. Businesses are seen to taking targets as far as science-based emission reduction targets, SBTi, or signing up to RE100 or EP100, and smartly using sustainability as a key differentiator. But how do you make sustainability or sustainable finance in case of financial institutions and ESG as a risk, return, and impact kind of a strategy? I think that is where the world is really going. A quick look at what is sustainable finance. I'm sure most of you are aware about it. There are various definitions across markets, across geographies, but all converge, as I mentioned, risk, return, impact. The European Union calls it as the process of taking due account of ESG considerations when making investment decisions in the financial sector, leading to increased long-term investments into sustainable economic activities and projects, while the OECD for green finance defines it as finance for achieving economic growth while reducing pollution and greenhouse gas emissions, minimizing waste, and improving efficiency in the use of natural resources. What you would have noticed is, and there is of course a World Bank definition focusing on climate finance, that climate finance is a subset of green, which is a subset of sustainable finance, all pointing towards climate action. More recently, a new type of finance has evolved. It's not on the screen, but I want to mention it here, transition finance. And that is defined as any form of financial support that helps high carbon companies start to implement long-term changes to become greener. So these are hard to abate sectors, absolutely those sitting within emerging markets, within developing countries. And transition finance is gaining a lot of importance, given that many financial institutions are now believing that helping high carbon companies transit to net zero emissions is becoming vital to combat climate change. And banks like the HSBC are coming up with products in the transitional finance market to help hard to abate companies to be able to move or transit from brown to green. Okay, this is the most interesting part and the one that I love, because this is what I have actually done over the years. So some of the key sustainable finance products that are linked to green, social, or sustainability. So one is, we've heard about green bonds, which are very popular. So unlike regular bonds, the proceeds of these green, social, sustainability bonds are deployed towards projects which naturally have the attributes that are mentioned, like, for example, transport, renewable energy, water, agriculture, biodiversity, education, health, employment, affordable housing. Globally, the issuance of sustainable finance bonds during the Q1 of 2021 more than doubled from a year-on-year perspective, with issuances surpassing over $200 billion. The green bond market has reached a record-breaking USD 269 billion at the end of December 2020, of course. And this is just above the figure of the 2019 performance of green bonds. However, most of the capital is seen to be gravitating towards renewable energy or energy efficiency. Within the emerging markets universe, India is the second largest green bond market with cumulative issuances of over 10 billion US dollars between 2012 and 2018. Not a great performance. We could do much better. But there are 12 Indian companies that have issued sustainable bonds worth over 5 billion so far. And this is 2 times the amount that is raised in the entire of 2020. In fact, in my previous role with one of the large private sector banks in the country, we did 3 green bond issuances. In fact, pioneering India's first green bond in 2015. This involved institutions like the International Finance Corporation, the Dutch Development Bank, FMO, and this was mainly towards raising capital for renewable energy. This opportunity came on the back of the regulator allowing banks to issue green infrastructure debt securities with subcategories in the green space. And it also provided a relaxation on certain taxes like the statutory liquidity ratio or the cash reserve ratio. We took the plunge at that time, given that we already had the risk understanding of the renewable energy sector, and issued the first green bond raising 150 million USD. Incidentally, at that time, we also issued the second green bond, and that was with the International Finance Corporation using their world's first green masala bond program that IFC had launched. And IFC issued a rupee-denominated bond on the London Stock Exchange that was subsequently deployed or privately placed in our second green bond. This was a very innovative issuance. And why? Because it showcased how a multilateral development bank used its AAA rating to mobilize capital from mainstream investors and passed on that benefit to an emerging market financial institution. So I think that was the biggest impact or the alpha that was created for a particular bond like that. Subsequently, I also worked on an affordable housing social bond where we were the sole arrangers and the subscribers to India's first social affordable housing bond that was issued for 130 million USD by a housing finance company. Then there are products like sustainability linked loans. We've seen that market also grow to around 120 billion US dollars last year. Blended finance, a unique, scalable and a sustainable way to aim to create investable opportunities and reduce the risk of associated financial institutions and with projects with perceived as high risk. Green retail products. There are no standard guidelines that exist for this category. I'm coming on the next slide. I'll come with some examples. However, there are institutions that have deployed very innovative products. So, for example, one of the large private sector banks in India has issued a green housing retail loan, which basically provides loan to green buildings, and this has got almost 310 certified buildings, and the book for this retail loan is over 2 billion US dollars. They've tied up with the India Green Building Council to promote green housing and basically finance green buildings. Then comes a product like green securitization using asset-backed securities, financial aggregation and securitization of small-size green assets, which normally are not don't have access to capital, has become very relevant. And aggregating these assets into an asset-backed security and then hive it off onto the capital markets for longer-term or low-cost funding. I think this is also becoming quite popular. So Asia has seen developments which is encouraging and has set the tone for further issuances of sustainable finance products and structures. Like I mentioned, green bonds, Asia has contributed almost 20% to the global green bond issuance market in 2020. There are more and more banks and corporations, including Thailand's government becoming the first in Southeast Asia to issue a sovereign green bond using others who are using innovative models. I want to give you a blended finance example here, which we worked on, and the relevance I will mention here. So this was focused at being very innovative and bringing impact from a financial inclusion standpoint. So in India, western part of India, there are 48,000, 50,000 women who make salt from September to April every year. And this is in 52 degrees centigrade, where in very, very harsh conditions, these women are making salt. And that is their only way to their livelihood. They use emission belching diesel water pumps to draw the brine from the ground and throw it across pans. They have zero access to formal finance. They are unbanked, underserved, sitting in an underserved market, and they borrow from local money lenders anywhere where is upwards of 36 to 100% rate of interest. At the end of 7 months of rigorous labor, they earn about $300 after paying their debt to the money lenders. So what we did was we did a program where we took a cohort of 600 women and moved them first, because the input cost was high on diesel pumps. We moved them from diesel to solar pumps, created a blended finance facility which had credit enhancement and credit affordability. So what we did was we tied up with a local cooperative bank to give loans to these women to buy the solar pumps on the back of a credit enhancement that we were providing. Our market intelligence and analysis, given that we had a large microfinance book, told us that default rate on microfinance borrowing by women was only 2.6%. So we took that opportunity and created a credit enhancement, and we did an interest subvention of 13%, 8% against the 13% rate of interest. What we saw was at the end of the program where we provided this facility, their incomes went up to $850, significant rise. We saw that the carbon, on these pumps, 2.7 tons of CO2 was brought down, and there was huge amount of impact for them from a livelihood perspective. I think we need such kind of innovations. Now, here the role is for DFIs, and given the aggregating nature of the Asian economy, DFIs could come forward with credit enhancements like these to be able to bring in private finance and create that alpha or that impact that we are looking for in the market. There are also hybrid annuity models for large infrastructure projects that are there, which are tied up to performance. The payment is tied up to performance of certain projects, and I think that creates the project going, because most of the times we've seen that in PPPs, on the lack of performance, the projects fail, and I think that creates more workability for projects like these. One other example that I want to cite here is that we have we did some work with, so in India, every state government provides subsidy for sanitary napkins for the poor people and for the underserved, the rural markets basically. And what we did was, using digital technology, we worked on an application that was made available to self-help groups to basically place their orders to the manufacturers who are sitting on this app for sanitary napkins, and then access the subsidy automatically the minute they put in the request for or they got the order done. And that catered to over 800,000 school-going girls and touched about 18 million women hailing from rural pockets. So that was a great example for replication into different markets. I thought this was very important for us to mention. There are many such examples here, but I thought, given the paucity of time, I want to very quickly run through. We've seen a lot of innovations in the wholesale finance space. It's very important to see these also in the retail space. And there was another instrument, financial instrument that we worked on which was called the Green Fixed Deposit, where the retail customer was no compromise on the rate of interest, because green is normally looked at as either subsidized or expensive. So normal rate of interest or higher rate of interest, a commitment to plow all the proceeds to climate finance that were collected in this deposit, paperless transaction, and planting trees on behalf of all the depositors. Within 52 days, we collected 150 million deposits with 6,000 depositors. And within 6 months, this went up to upwards of 300 million USD. So just look at the volume of finance that can be brought to the table through green product, introducing of green products. I would like to skip the couple of slides. I would like to go more on to, given that we just have about 10 minutes left, to talking about, this is also covered. So if you can go to slide 14. Yes, so this is important. Sustainable finance and ESG are intrinsically linked and is fast emerging. It's well-established concepts within the investment and the financial community, which is emerging. There is hard data that is linking economic cost to ESG risks. I just mentioned it a while ago. And it also shows that the world is facing losses of over $1 trillion in the last decade on account of erratic weather. So that's the kind of linkages that ESG has to business. Of course, there is greater levels of transparency, determination of risk exposure, new commercial opportunities with ESG at the core. And there are many financial institutions across the globe today placing that not just as thematic investing, but more as a core philosophy to enhance capital access, to bring down the non-performing assets and also the cost of funding. So I think these are some of the advantages that we see as far as ESG linkage is concerned. A quick look at ESG emergence in India. We have seen that, startling statistics on fresh water availability, air pollution, emissions, etc. Brought in the triggers for ESG investing market. And we have 10 active ESG equity mutual funds that are into the market, where again, the investment philosophy behind these funds is to look at 100% investing into sustainability oriented companies, or maybe not some part, but at least there is a movement and there's a realization in the market that there are these funds that are better subscribed to with ESG as one of the parameters to be looked at. As far as role of banks are concerned, one data point is the banks which have provided, the largest banks in India that have provided data to CDP, Carbon Disclosure Project, it is estimated that almost 84 billion USD of debt is at India's leading banks, and FIs is estimated to be at risk from extreme weather events. Furthermore, there are regulations in many countries that are coming up to manage climate risks, which is also emerging, and some have got a head start, given that these disclosures are being asked by developed market investors, and therefore the developing market or emerging market investees or banks have to fall in line. We're going to just talk about that in a bit, in terms of how there are banks which have made significant strategic decisions and are ramping up their climate finance offerings, offering maybe at times discounting on green lending, mobilizing new capital for environment, etc. Coming to standards and disclosures, I think two important events are to be noted here. The G20 finance ministers asked the Financial Stability Board to look at climate-related risks, forming the task force on climate-related financial disclosures, which needs to look at how climate-related financial disclosures are interacting with other, so how financial and non-financial disclosures really interact. And this has triggered asset managers and asset owners to implement recommendations and also demand questions. I think one important point to be noted is that the UK government has made it mandatory for all businesses to disclose using TCFD, disclose on climate-related financial risks, and this is applicable, and therefore there will be investor pressure. Then there are the EU guidelines, the EU taxonomy. Many of you may have heard about it, that it aims to create a unified classified system for green and sustainable economic activities under the EU Sustainable Finance Regulation. Again, that's going to be kicking off soon in 2023. This will be applicable to EU non-funds investors, everybody. Similarly, the EU Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation, which is going to be applicable to the financial market participants and financial advisors. The US Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, has recently announced the creation of Climate and ESG Task Force. The focus is to identify any material gaps and any misstatements in issuer disclosures on climate risks. What I'm trying to say here is the implications of all of this on the Asian financial sector is soon to be seen, and we cannot be ill-prepared because there will be a cascading effect. Then, of course, the UN Principles of Responsible Banking that provide a framework of sustainable banking, enabling the banking industry to demonstrate how it is making positive impact. All this is going to raise pressure across geographies from investors, from banks, or from lending agencies on businesses and on those who are seeking capital to fall in line. And therefore, countries need to ramp up their overall policies, either have their own set of green, like a localization approach, where there is taxonomy, which is local, but with the flavor of global. I think that's going to be very, very critical. Couple of last slides. We've seen how global development has happened. These two slides, I'm focusing more on DFIs because I'm told that the larger audience is DFIs. DFIs operate similar to commercial banks, but differently, since their mandate or mission is to also focus on the softer objectives of sustainable development. And they're seen to take more risk and have a more longer term appetite on project returns. Unlike commercial banks, their shareholders are not always or do not always emphasize on specific return on equity, which at times relieves DFIs of the pressure linked to economic performance or profitability. And due to these elements, DFIs also face growth challenges, asset quality issues, sometimes governance related challenges towards, I think, going forward, it's very important to look at, for example, how do DFIs really capture this and capitalize on this opportunity? So measuring impact and end objective of any mandate. So building frameworks to measure risk and return like profitability and shareholder value, adopting an effective measurement policy to maximize impact of taxpayers' money, which clearly states the mission, KPIs, and impact parameters. Implementation of such an effective system that ranks project against KPIs and evaluation-based approach to prioritize on good projects and getting out of failing projects, I think that would be the key. Then having an actionable strategy, I think that would be very important with clear measurable targets, right from boardroom to copy room, as I say, and help and bring in standardization, enhancing governance, making good credit decisions. I think bringing down the NPAs in today's day and time, and a culture of clear separation of duties between credit lending teams and truly independent credit environment and compliance teams would help rein in the NPAs. Collaborating with private sector funds, like I said, credit enhancement facilities, or participating more and more into blended finance. I think that would be really very, very important from the DFI sector. And the opportunities are in several forms: corporate lending, equity investments, technical assistance. I think that's where the opportunity is. Then reaching out to SMEs, a small and medium scale industry. I think they are the ones that need capital, given that they're the backbone of the manufacturing sector. I think they are the ones who need the capital the most, and it would help to create a different market. Not only that, also help to create jobs, innovation, market oriented, taking up grassroots projects. I think that will be very, very critical. Then local currency lending. I think the asset liability management of DFIs is somehow facilitated by long-term nature of their funding and reducing the liquidity risk. So currency and interest rate risks can be mitigated by lending in hard, easy to hedge currencies. So I think those are some of the areas that could be looked at. And of course, attracting and retaining talent. I think that is becoming very important when we talk about sustainable finance and ESG. We always ask, where are those professionals who have the experience of being able to bundle or balance this risk and opportunity kind of a mandate, and that's really very key. I think in my last slide, what I want to say is, for all this, may it be countries, may it be nations, geographies, or may it be at institutional level, a common standardized ESG framework, a uniform definition of sustainability, green taxonomy, this would really help. Green tagging, so asset tagging, I think this would really help in understanding where the stress lies, where the risk lies, and where is the opportunity. One good thing is that the Ministry of Finance has formed, in India, has formed a task force on sustainable finance. And I'm a part of the working groups where we are working on creating a green taxonomy, regulations, disclosures, and hopefully India would soon have those norms in place. And the fact that the Central Bank of India, that's the RBI, has joined the network of greening the financial system, the NGFS, which has the Malaysian Central Bank has also become a member. I think that has the strength and the platform of creating certain commonalities, best practice sharing, learning from each other. I think that will bolster well for the future. One other good thing in India is the regulator, the market regulator has come up with further stringent disclosure norms called the Business Responsibility and Sustainability Reporting, which focuses on the ESG risk and opportunity, as I mentioned, but it also looks at what is the carbon footprint of the fund portfolio. So there is an opportunity and consistency that will be brought in on the actual ESG quotient, and no scope for any kind of greenwashing that is really there. So I think these are some of the opportunities that I would like to mention. And I think overall, as we go forward, there is a need, when we look at a very holistic kind of an effect for business growth. I think a 360-degree kind of an approach is very much important and required, and that needs embedding ESG and climate risks into lending decisions or into investment decisions, investing in sectors that are creating the positive impact, and not just renewable energy or maybe energy efficiency, but getting into low carbon assets, getting into water, sanitation, education, climate smart agriculture, climate smart urban infra, innovating for the bottom of the pyramid. I think all of us are sitting in markets where there's a huge opportunity there. Decarbonization and greening of our own internal operations. Bank have a huge carbon footprint from a scope 1, scope 2 kind of a perspective, and diversifying human capital towards holistic risk analysis to include ESG. I think all this is very important from a future standpoint, and these are the models which have worked for many institutions that have looked at these aspects. I will stop here, and I hope this was useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Namita, on the presentation. It was very insightful, very comprehensive presentation on the DFI, on the DFIs, on the ESG, as well as ways that we can, empower ESG. Now, we do have a few questions up here. I think the first question is the presentation shareable? Ms. Namita, that is a question only you can answer because the presentation belongs to you.
Yes, it is shareable.
Okay, fantastic. So we will get the presentation from us, from Auctus to myself, and we will share the presentation to participants, provided, okay, so it can be free as well. So provided you email to us and tell us how this particular session has benefited you, right? So that way we have a little bit of engagement session. At the same time, we get your feedback as well in terms of how this session has benefited to you and how you're learning from this particular session, how you're going to take it back to your organization and how you're going to influence your organizations to go along with ESG. So we have to have some impact from there. So if you want the slides, right, please do email to us and tell us what you have learned from this particular session, as well as how you intend to implement and influence your organizations with that, with what Ms. Namita has has presented. Now, moving forward as well, there is a question from Nur Hafiz Sharif, Ms. Namita. He says here, both green finance and climate finance seems to be identical. Does climate finance focus specifically on climate mitigation and adaptation, whereas green finance covers the rest? Perhaps you can highlight a little bit of that.
Okay, so let me explain that. Yes, like I said, climate finance is a subset of green finance. Green finance looks at most of the projects that would classify under green as far as the definition goes. So I'm just going back to I'll just take you to the slide that we had on green. Just if you could just put up the slide that we had on green finance. What number was that? I'll just be able to. Yes.
Oh, can you blow it up?
Yeah. So green finance looks at reducing pollution and greenhouse gas emissions, minimizing waste, improving efficiency in basically use of natural resources. And as far as climate finance is concerned, climate finance is more linked to international public finance that has a very explicit kind of an objective to supporting mitigation and resilience building activities. So the Green Climate Fund, as we have, is particularly looking at mitigation and resilience building. However, the larger green piece could be only mitigation, or it could be adaptation. Normally, green finance is not really adaptation. Whenever there's adaptation, it would fall under climate finance. So that is really the difference in both. The other thing is when you look at the overall climate finance kind of projects, they are very large in scale and they are funded mostly. So if you look at World Bank funding into countries which are looking at adaptation, that qualifies as more of climate finance. And in green is more where there is a larger part of private entities that are participating. Sectors remain the same, but there could be some sectors under adaptation that may fall, that may not fall. So there is a thin line there, and you're very right. It is about how the finance is actually looked at, and it is for each entity or a government to put out those particular definitions. So that's really, so there is no global or universal definition that has been put out as of now by anybody. So in case of green bonds, for example, there is the ICMA, International Capital Markets Association, has put out clear norms saying a green bond qualifies under ABCD. So those kind of norms are then universally followed. Whoever is issuing the green bond will say, I either follow the green bond, the ICMA green bond principles, or I follow the climate bonds principles. And it's very clear in terms of what is the category. But here, because of lack of larger definition, the categorization at times becomes difficult.
Thank you on the explanation. I hope that clarifies for Nur Hafiz. I have a question, Ms. Namita, before we end. The question on, well, actually I have two questions, if that's okay with you. You mentioned earlier that the listed companies are required to do a national CSR 2% out of their 3 years income, average profit income, right? So do they get also a tax break, or do they get any kind of tax incentive? No, it's just a requirement.
It is just a requirement. So it was the mandate of social development is mainly with the government, right? But the government wanted to bring in private participation. If you look at the sheer quantum or the volume of funds that are coming from private sector vis-a-vis what the government outlays are, it's minuscule. However, for private participation, this particular regulation was brought in and created a kind of a market standardization, which says that, which gives clear guidelines in terms of there are 11 areas where a corporate can deploy their capital. And now the rules have become further stringent. Earlier, they were a little loose But from this year onwards, they've become further stringent, where the 2% has been now made mandatory in such a way that it has to be spent over 3 years. So once it is allocated as 2%, you can't take it back on your books, and there's no tax break. This is profit before tax.
Okay. Okay, so that clarifies that as well. So my final question, Ms. Namita, and this is, I think, no matter where you go, this is a very hot question as well. It is the balancing act between talent and pay. And as you know, development finance institution, as opposed to commercial financial institution, commercial banks, right? Commercial banks, they make money. They're able to pay their talents according to market rate and whatnot. On the other hand, you have development finance institution. Doesn't matter which country you're in, you are responsible for the people's money because you are funded technically by the government itself. So in that respect, you can't pay what the market pays as well. So earlier on, you mentioned about the talent retention, as well as making sure that we get the right talent. So perhaps you can elaborate a little bit more on how we can do this delicate balancing from your experience.
Thanks for this question. And indeed, DFIs compete with private sector when it comes to talent that is available, right? And they're often at a disadvantage when it comes to absolute level of remuneration, like you very rightly said. At the same time, DFIs offer job stability, a sense of purpose, and which in itself is a strong motivation for many to join and stay. I mean, in a private sector, there's no job stability, right? Or it's all monetary in terms of, there is pressures of targets to be achieved quarter on quarter. So in private sector, we only lived from one quarter to another quarter, right? And that was also for, I think, for those whose mindset is to look at a purpose. I think working for commercial banks becomes a challenge, and they would naturally experience, not like a satisfaction. So every individual is cut for a certain type of role. However, I think the way we are moving forward and the way the DFI's role is fast changing, not only in terms of how to allocate capital, but also in terms of the kind of talent that they need to acquire. I think it is very important, and this is one change which we have to bring about, where it's important to cultivate a system of performance-based remuneration, allowing to compensate best talent to participate or to join these kind of entities, right? Also, staff rotation through various jobs keeps the talent motivated, right? I mean, within risk units. So what we did way back in 2012, 2013 is within the risk unit itself, we introduced ESG risk professionals, and then they were on a rotational job. So I think, those are the kind of broadening of the skill sets is very, very critical to be able to attract talent. But DFIs overall within the mandate that they have, I think, the way DFIs have technical assistance that they provide for others when you are doing a particular project or a fund, I think there should be some allocation of some technical assistance for themselves to develop this manpower. So, Anif, one other thing that we are doing with some of the DFIs in Africa and in other APAC countries is we are working with these DFIs on building their skill sets. auctusESG is doing that. We are building skill sets on particular aspects of climate risk assessment, ESG assessment, climate resilience. So all this, and we are conducting anywhere between 2 to 3 hour sessions to 3-day programs for DFIs, and we are seeing a lot of traction in them participating in these. And it would be great to look at some kind of partnership on similar lines with ADFIM for your members and all those who want to participate.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Ms. Namita. Definitely, we are looking into it. And as a matter of fact, we will be organizing a few work group sessions in discussing in detail in terms of how we can push our ESG agenda further. So that brings us to the close of Ms. Namita's session today. We sincerely appreciate your time today and your sharing. It was a wonderful session. And we do hope you'll get the presentation slides a little bit later so that we can share with those who would like it. And again, as a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, if you need the slides, I will put it up in the chat box where you have to email it to learning@adfame.com.my. You'll have to email how the session has impacted you and what you've learned from the session. On top of that, you'll also let us know how this session is going to impact your work as well as your organization as well. So based on that, we will definitely send to you your presentation slide. Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Vikas. So,
thank you very much.
Welcome. So we move on straight to our next speaker, Mr. Coskun Kanberoğlu. Türkiye Sinay Kalkınma Bankası, or TSKB, celebrating its 70th year in the Turkish banking sector in 2020. 70 years, ladies and gentlemen. And it was established in 1950 in Istanbul as Turkey's first private development and investment bank, with the support of the World Bank, the Central Bank of Turkey, and the shareholding of commercial banks. Its main activity segments are corporate banking, investment banking, and advisory services. TSKB has its headquarters in Istanbul, and if I'm right, with one branch in Ankara. Since its establishment, the bank has been providing an increasing contribution to promoting sustainable growth, development, and the transformation of the manufacturing economy in Turkey. With its extensive knowledge through its corporate banking, investment banking, and advisory services capacities, which it offers to a wide range of customers. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this part is very, very interesting. TSKB has had a sustainability management system, SMS, in place since 2005, which is supervised by an internal sustainability committee consisting of 2 board members and 2 executive vice presidents. The SMS quantifies the environmental impact of all its activities and identifies strategies to reduce it. In late 2006, TSKB became the first Turkish bank to be awarded ISO 14001 in Environmental Management System certification. In 2008, it became Turkey's first carbon neutral bank by effectively erasing its carbon footprint, and has remained so ever since. In 2012, TSKB became the first member of the Turkish banking industry to be awarded ISO 14064-1 greenhouse gases certification on account of its efforts to control greenhouse gas emissions in line with its support for sustainable living. Ladies and gentlemen, that's impressive. Since its launch of its environment management system, TSKB has reduced its CO2 emissions by 41% and has improved its electrical energy, natural gas, paper, and water consumption performance by 28%, 48%, 44%, and 20% respectively. Now, this is one of the reasons why we have Mr. Coskun Kanberoğlu as our speaker today. Mr. Coskun Kanberoğlu graduated from Bogazici University, Chemical Engineering Department. He's an engineer by training. He has been working at TSKB since 1997 at various departments as the Senior Manager, Department Head of Engineering and Technical Consulting Department until 2016. Since then, he has been serving as Department Head of Development Finance Institutions. And more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, he is the chairman of the Sustainability Subcommittee within the structure of TSKB's Sustainability Management System. So we have the person responsible for the Sustainability Management System himself together with us today. So it's the right person to talk about the issue. So ladies and gentlemen, I do not want to take too much time on my end. I'd like to invite Mr. Coskun Kanberoğlu for his speech. Please take the stage.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mott. The Turkish pronunciation was perfect. While you say the Türkiye Sanayi Kalkınma Bankası, most of the time the foreigners are mixed with the Turkish pronunciation. It's a perfect.
I watch a lot of Turkish drama.
Okay, I'm sharing the presentation now. Just a moment, please. Can you see my presentation now?
Yes, maybe you could make it full screen. It's not full screen. It did not become full screen.
I think I mixed. Just a moment. Can you see now?
It's not full screen, Mr. Kanberoğlu. It's the reading slide.
I don't know how to do that. Just
okay. Can you escape for a while and perhaps you need to press the button down at the bottom. No, it doesn't. Still brings up this one.
I'm escaping now.
Okay, escape. And then there is a button at the bottom. Or perhaps you would like me to share the file?
Yes, please.
Okay, I will do that then. Just 1 minute. Ladies and gentlemen, please do be patient to bear with us. We will put up the slides very quickly. Just 1 minute as we open the file. Can you stop sharing, Mr. Trishko, while I bring this up?
Okay, I stopped.
Just quickly, my computer is still opening it. Okay, can we see this?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic.
So you are going to control the slides?
I will control the slides,
Okay,
Mr. Trishko.
Thank you very much. Sorry for the inconvenience.
No problem.
I would like to thank ADFIM and other organizers for inviting TSKB, the Industrial Development Bank of Turkey. It's a pleasure for me to speak this valuable event on sustainable finance. The pandemic that we have been going through almost 2 years helped us to recall that the way financial sector responds to the crisis has long-lasting recovery consequences. In current situation, the development banks are even more relevant than ever to contribute to a recovery which will lead to greener, more inclusive and more resilient economies. Banking industry in Turkey has undergone a certain restructuring period in recent years and led the way ahead along with the guidance of the respective authorities. But the COVID-19 pandemic had some challenging impacts on the economic growth, as it is the case in the world. The potential effect will for sure depend on worldwide precautions and how long the suspension on economic activities will take. In these extraordinary times caused by COVID-19, as TSKB, we have dedicated ourselves to support our clients and the economic development of Turkey in line with our development banking mission. TSKB has critical contribution to the country's industrial and economic development with its sustainable and inclusive banking vision. Today, I'm gonna share TSKB's experience under 5 topics, namely TSKB at a glance, constituents of sustainable finance, sustainability at TSKB, funding structure, corporate banking and loan portfolio. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. TSKB was established in 1950 with the support of World Bank and the Central Bank of Turkey and shareholding of private commercial banks. This year, we are celebrating the 71st anniversary of our bank. TSKB is Turkey's first privately owned development and investment bank. This private ownership is a very unique, and there isn't much example of private development banks in the world. TSKB is a non-deposit taking institution which funds the majority of its lending activities from multilateral loans, mostly guaranteed by the Turkish Treasury. 54% of non-equity liability is state guaranteed. We have been supporting Turkey's sustainable economic growth since our foundation, based on our long-lasting collaboration with our stakeholders through a broad array of corporate banking, investment banking, and consultancy services. Along with our mission, we are keen to support our clients during these extraordinary environments, thanks to our strong financial ratios, as well as long-lasting relations with our clients, international and supranational development finance institutions and financial institutions. It is our belief that the coordinating efforts with demonstrating the full potential of the development banks by short-term responses with sustainable recovery measures to the crisis will bring a long-term and much stronger impact on our mutual mission. Next slide, please. When you look at the shareholding structure, you can see İşbank Group, which is one of the leading private commercial banks, as the major shareholder. The second big shareholder is Vakıfbank, which is one of the leading public commercial banks. The remaining 40% share is free floating at the Borsa Istanbul Stock Exchange. This is a unique structure because development banks generally are publicly owned, but even though it is privately owned, TSKB is considered as a policy bank so that it has privilege to benefit from Turkish Treasury guarantee for borrowings from international development finance institutions such as IBRD, European Investment Bank, or Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. As can be seen from the table on the right-hand side, TSKB has various rating scores from Fitch, Moody's, Saha, and Sustainalytics. I would like to mention especially Sustainalytics rating score. Currently, we ranked 6th bank among 372 banks worldwide in terms of our environmental, social, and governance risk rating, and we lead the Turkish bank to that end. TSKB's services and products can be categorized under 3 main headings. Within the scope of corporate banking activities, TSKB offers loan products that contribute to the sustainable development of Turkish economy. Corporate finance, money and capital market advisory and derivatives are the products and services offered to our clients under the investment banking activities. TSKB has accumulated significant amount of intellectual capacity through years and offers advisory services to both domestic and international markets and clients. There are 3 major advisory services given by our technical teams, namely economic research, financial advisory service, and engineering and technical advisory services. Next slide, please. As a development bank, TSKB has various stakeholders to be managed properly. Needless to say, the major stakeholders are our clients, namely large corporate, mid-caps, companies, and SMEs. Since TSKB is not collecting any deposit, it is fully rely on mostly thematic funds raised from international DFIs and FIs. To be successful on this front, we closely following international and sustainability agenda, and in parallel to these agendas, team generation, add value generation, and capacity building has great importance. Development banks serve sustainable development of the countries by taking into consideration of priorities of the government and public bodies. To this end, TSKB collaborates closely with regulatory bodies such as Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Environment, and Ministry of Treasury and Finance. In order to support its development finance activities and for being up to date on international agenda, TSKB became the member of various initiatives and mission clubs. The list can be seen here. There are many clubs and initiatives, international initiatives. Today, ATFIMI has invited us to this valuable event. So one of the membership is related to the ATFIMI. Last but not the least, TSKB is also a member of various NGOs related with its activities, as can be seen on the left bottom side of the slide. Next slide, please. Next, please. Okay. Before starting to share TSKB's experience on sustainable finance, I would like to explain what we understand from the phrase of sustainable finance. This was also a discussion on previous presentation. What is green finance? What is sustainable finance? Most of the time, sustainable finance concept is mixed with climate finance or green finance. Sustainable finance includes these two concepts, but it also includes social, economical, and governance aspects. These are the understanding that we are relying on. This chart is directly taken from UNEP-FI. I hope you may also, in line with these, you may accept this approach. Next slide, please. Since our establishment, sustainability has been embedded in our business model. With medium to long-term investments we contribute to the sustainable economic development of Turkey. In this regard, we support less developed regions, encourage women participation to the economy, provide financing to operational health and safety. Besides, with renewable energy and resource efficiency project, we highly contribute to reduce energy dependency in Turkey. As Turkey's first carbon neutral bank, we also support transition to low carbon economy. In addition to financial feasibility of the projects, environmental and social aspects are also taken into consideration during our loan evaluation process. With our environmental and social risk evaluation tool, we became not only a pioneer using this model, but also an advisor who shared its experience with the Turkish banking sector. We support directly or indirectly 13 of UN Sustainable Development Goals. As one of the founding signatories of the UNEP-FI Principles for Responsible Banking, we stated that we will continue to extend resources for UN SDGs. TSKB published its first sustainability report in 2009, being the first corporation to do so in Turkish financial service industry.
Mr. Coskun, I think you are disconnected a bit. Ladies and gentlemen, it looks like we have a slight technical glitch here. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think there's a slight technical glitch. I think there's Mr. Coskun got disconnected. Please do bear with us. We'll have to wait, we will wait for Mr. Coskun to enter the room again. Okay, he is back.
Sorry, I'm disconnected, I think, because of the internet connection.
Welcome, Mr. Coskun. No problem. We are waiting here.
Thank you very much. I was on this slide.
Yes.
Did you hear my last sentence related with the sustainability report?
Yes, we did. You can continue from there.
Okay. Let me repeat the last sentence, then I will continue that. TSKB published its first sustainability report in 2009, being the first corporation to do so in Turkish financial service industry. Having published 5 sustainability reports and 2 integrated reports so far, TSKB released its first integrated annual report in 2018. With this report, TSKB aims to share the value generated via its operation with its stakeholders. We are working with a huge effort to share the accurate impacts caused by our range of activities with our stakeholders. Next slide, please.
There's a slight delay in the connection and sharing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I would like to share important milestones in the last 5 years of sustainability journey. We have placed our name among achievements such as the first sustainability report and the first integrated reports in Turkish finance sector and the first green sustainable bond issuance in CEMA region. Moreover, we issued world's first subordinated sustainable bond. In 2019, TSKB is awarded with the highest climate score in the Turkish finance sector by CDP, Carbon Disclosure Projects. We pay attention to the climate-related risks and opportunities whose importance increases over years, and we follow the latest development in CDP and TCFD closely. Recently, TSKB has been rated among the top diversified banks for environmental and social and governance performance by Sustainalytics. TSKB ranked 6th out of 372 banks with the ESG risk rating of 16.7 due to its medium risk exposure and strong management of material ESG issues. This rating places TSKB first among Turkish banks evaluated by Sustainalytics and the 2nd percentile in its sub-industry of diversified banks. We shall continue to pioneer the best practices in Turkey by way of closely monitoring and adapting to changes in sustainability universe. TSKB has been the first Turkish bank to participate UNEP FI TCFD banking pilot phase 2. Moreover, as of the beginning of this year, it has become once again the first Turkish bank to participate TCFD banking pilot phase 3 at UNEP FI. Next slide, please. On this slide, I would like to share recent development on ESG and sustainability banking. Combating against climate change and support to transition to low carbon economy are among the bank's top priorities driven by our 2030 strategy. We have published our climate mitigation and adaptation policy in the second quarter of this year. As one of the leading Turkish institutions supporting TCFD, we published our first climate risk reports in alignment with these recommendations in May, which is at the same time the first system that enables us to meet our targets. We have also given place to sectoral case studies, portfolio heat map, and underlined our commitment to continue supporting Turkey's transition to a low carbon economy. As a carbon neutral bank since 2008 and signatory of the Science Based Target Initiative since 2015, we set a reduction target of 63% by 2035 as part of Scope 1. With respect to Scope 2, we will continue to offset our carbon emissions by solely using renewable energy. For value chain emissions under Scope 3, we are currently working and talking and taking national and international standards into consideration to develop our roadmap. We aim to ensure measuring and monitoring the portfolio impact by 2023. As we previously mentioned, we renewed our syndicated loan this year by integrating 3 sustainability KPIs, which I'm going to share the details in the following slides. Aiming to enrich the activities in a manner which includes sustainable finance opportunities within the scope of investment banking, we arranged the first Sukuk issuance with a focus on the UN SDGs. As a member of Impact Investment Advisory Board, we put emphasis on the development of impact investment in Turkey, and we aim to enhance our capacity on impact measurement. Thanks to accumulated know-how we have acquired in sustainability over the past 30 years, we are very pleased and proud of the awards we have won from reputable global organizations such as Euromoney, World Finance, and the bankers. Next slide, please. Founded in 2005, TSKB's environmental management system has been further improved over years and evolved into TSKB's Sustainability Management System, SMS, in 2012. Managed under the Sustainable Policy dated 2015, TSKB's SMS has been prepared and implemented in accordance with the requirement of ISO 14001 and ISO 14064 standards. In line with the principles of responsible banking, TSKB attaches importance tool model in all of the investment projects it has focused on since 2007. This model has been developed working with KfW and our also technical teams and engineers also improved the model very well. And this model evaluates the projects and gives a score as international standard as Category A, Category B, and Category C. But while categorizing these risks, and also it implies which detail, which sub impacts are critical and which impacts should be closely followed. This model gives the clue to these impacts. Moreover, in 2020, TSKB introduced a new procedure named Evaluation of Working Capital Loans, Environmental and Social Risk, defining the process during the evaluation and management of the environmental and social risk of the client, securing working capital loans from TSKB. This is also, I think, important step for TSKB, because until now, we have been evaluating only the investment loans in terms of environmental and social risk assessment. Starting from this year, we will also be evaluating the working capital loans in terms of environmental and social impacts. TSKB's sustainability policy is also supported with complementary policies under
Mr. Coskun, your internet connection is disrupted again just now.
Can you see me now? Or?
Yes, now you're back.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Sorry for inconvenience. I especially came to bank not to have this kind of problem, but still I have this problem. Sorry for that.
No problem.
Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay. All sustainability works across the bank are managed by the Sustainability Committee, which was established in 2014. By the end of 2020, the committee comprised of 3 board members, the CEO, and the 2 executive vice presidents. The mission of the committee is to coordination of the work and business plan which will be created within the scope of TSKB's sustainability strategy, vision, and targets. The work of the Sustainability Committee is supported by the Sustainability Subcommittee and working groups, in which the representatives from different departments of TSKB are active members. In 2020, at TSKB, sustainability work was carried out by 8 different working groups under the Sustainability Subcommittee. These working groups are kind of agile working groups, and the members of these groups are coming from various departments related. That might be related with this mission, and also we are encouraging the individuals who are interested in this subject. If they volunteer to work this group, we welcome them and we give some duties to learn this subject, because this kind of working groups are not in parallel with their job description, but it improves their background, so that we encourage all the staff in our bank. More than 100 colleagues are working in these groups at the moment. And these working groups, time to time, we go through this list, and time to time, we create new groups, and sometimes we cancel some of the groups. If they completed their duty, we cancel and we create new groups. So it's a kind of a dynamic system. Next slide, please. These are the groups, reporting working group, especially deals with the integrated report, and also they are also responsible for CDP reporting, carbon disclosure project reporting, communication on progress on report, Global Compact reporting. And also, as you may know, in 2019, UNEP-FR Responsible Banking Principles has been released, and we
Mr. Joshua. Yes.
Sorry?
You were stuck for a while. There was a disconnect just now from the ISO.
Okay, Sustainability Index Group, as you may know, they are dealing with the sustainability indices, both in Borsa Istanbul and also the international standards. ISO Standards Working Group is the main responsibilities is related with ISO 14001 and ISO 14064. This year they created a new project. They are going to have, take 2 more standards related with occupational health and safety and and also how can I say, the water management. Climate Risk Working Group is responsible for the TCFD and TCFD related studies. They are working very efficiently, and this year they released the report. Dialogue with this stakeholder working group is dealing with the corporate communication of sustainability activities in TSKB. Gender Equality Working Group is very important group because we are very active on gender equality lending, and we are getting loans from various DFIs just to support the gender equality. So this is also very important. Social Impact Analysis Working Group is also very important for us because until recent years, environmental impacts was very important, but as you may also know that the social impacts are very important. Not only the negative impacts, and also the positive impacts should be also measured and reported, so that this group is also dealing with these activities. And the last group is cooperation with international initiatives on sustainability working group. This manages the relationship between the TSKB and the clubs that we are already the member of membership. Next slide, please. In 2020, TSKB fulfilled its sustainability financial targets in line with its expectation despite the pandemic, and continued to support Turkey's transition to low carbon economy with its new disbursements within the scope of renewable energy and energy efficiency projects. In the coming period, TSKB will continue to increase its supports to the SDGs, and in this context, it has set new long-term SDGs linked targets and other SMART targets, which can be shown in this table. I'm not going to read all of these. These can be taken as an example. The various banks or institutions create their own targets, but the levels that we have already reached is quite satisfactory, so that the additional targets are not so big as you may see here, but still it is quite challenging for us. Maybe in this this target, I should mention the European Green Deal. As you may know, Turkey's main trade partner is European Union. So while the European Green Deal has been released, it is an alarming factor of the Turkish production sector, because they have to adapt themselves to the European Green Deal and Green Taxonomy, so that they have to make some additional investments. And we are also studying European Green Deal and Green Taxonomy, and we are planning to give consultancy services to Turkish industry to adapt themselves to this changing world. As for the social capital, TSKB continues to create both direct and indirect positive social impacts through social responsibility projects and financial support for inclusiveness. The future targets can be seen in this slide. These are the targets related with the social capital. Next slide, please. The funding structure. As of the first quarter of 2021, aggregate amount of the funding is at $6 billion USD level. Approximately 35% is secured from the various development finance institutions. All of these borrowings are thematic loans and ESG aligned. The distribution of DFI funding can be seen on the right-hand side of the slide, which shows that major fund provider is IBRD, European Investment Bank, which accounts for approximately 60%. With the addition of sustainable bonds, ESG-linked syndication, the percentage of ESG-linked borrowings reaches to approximately 80%. And these figures and these structures make TSKB's efforts more easier than the commercial banks, because since we are not taking deposits, we directly working with international bodies that requires also ESG standards. Next slide, please. And major job description of the both departments can be seen on the slide. Even though almost all of the commercial banks has financial institution departments, similarly, TSKB always looking for opportunities by using its know-how and capacity to become the pioneering institutions on FI arena. I'm going to share the first that FI department has executed in the following slides. I wanted to show this structure because most of the banks has only financial institutions, but in 2014, TSKB has decided to separate these two departments because the structure and the duties are quite different. Fund sources and also diversify them by adding new DFIs. With this main idea, TSKB has started to collaborate with Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank on 2018 and China Development Bank in 2019. But when you look at the previous relationship, for example, World Bank, starting from the foundation of the TSKB, but also in years, we add various development finance institutions to this list. Next slide, please.
Mr. Coskun, we can't hear you.
Sorry.
Okay, you can.
Okay.
Now we're okay.
Please
go ahead.
Besides increasing borrowings and lending amount at these teams, TSKB actively searching new subjects and detailed eligibility criteria and KPIs to further develop the list. For example, Recently, we are actively working on youth unemployment, adaptation to European Green Deal, and circular economy. These are the themes. I think most of the development banks are very familiar with these themes. Of course, in time, for example, SME support by itself is no more a focus point for development finance institutions. So, for example, recent years, we are focusing on SME support with an additional impact related with gender or climate. Next slide, please. This slide shows the advantages of green sustainable bond, but I'm going to share this information in the coming slides. So can we go to the next slide, please? Okay. The long-standing relations with DFIs since our foundation had accumulated the sustainability culture and know-how in our bank. We also aimed towards growing our overall funding pool and welcome bond investors as new distinguished stakeholders. This led to DBAT Eurobond issuance in 2014 through our effort for funding diversification. In year 2016, TSKB carried a step forward for Eurobond issuances and executed the first green sustainable bond in Turkey and CEMEA region, Central European and Middle East and Africa region. As you know, the most important step for the green bond issuance is coming up with the framework, which is aligned with the green bond principles. During the framework drafting process, we collaborated with Sustainalytics on identifying eligibility criteria and KPIs. As the creation of a framework for a Turkish entity was a first also for Sustainalytics, I believe both parties had tremendous amount of learning. As we already obtained team funding from DFIs, identification of the eligibility criteria went easier for us. We also obtained third-party assurance for our framework, which elevated its credibility. Next slide, please. In 2017, the globally first sustainable Tier 2 was executed by TSKB. In doing so, TSKB's main motivation has been contributing to sustainable investments while shifting its learning curve. Although it seemed to be an advantageous in terms of workload that we had already issued our first green bond in 2016, it was still quite demanding to identify projects eligible for the pipeline. It was a massive effort to handle this pipeline, selection work in parallel to usual bond issuance steps. I would like to note that green bond and ESG-focused investors were of a great importance in both of our green sustainable Tier 2 issuances. They not only enable our investor base to diversify, but also increase the subscription multiple by showing high demand. Our green bond 10 times and Tier 2 were 4 times oversubscribed. That high demand was also an advantage for our bond pricing. Next slide. This slide shows the figures related with the sustainable bond issuance on January 2021. As you can see, the amount was $350 million, and it was on January, and also the oversubscription was there also, and zero new issue premium has been paid to this issuance, and the price improvement was at the level of 50 bips. Next slide, please. TSKB has once again led the way in Turkey with another first ESG rating linked club loan in 2020. This was kind of a market test for ESG-linked club loan. This was directly linked with ESG scores taken from Sustainalytics. Recently, the last month, TSKB secured a sustainability-linked syndication loan worth $192 million from a total of 14 banks and representing 11 different countries. But this syndication loan was not directly related with the ESG score from Sustainalytics. Instead, we put special KPIs, and we are going to report these achievements directly to these syndication banks. For the corporate banking, while we are deciding on project investments, there are some financial requirements and covenants. For the equity part, we generally seek 20% to 40% of equity from the investor. But depending on the nature of the investment, this level might increase or decrease. We also look at the structure of the project and also the sponsors. For the financial covenants, we look for time to time debt service coverage ratio, loan life coverage ratio, debt equity ratio. For the non-financial covenants, as you are also very familiar with that, financial indebtedness, cash sweeps, dividend lockup mechanism, change of control, and negative pledges are the non-financial covenants generally we are looking for. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we evaluate the projects, starting from the marketing to the completion of the project. In TSKB as a development bank, we have three separate evaluation teams. The first team is financial analysis, which is a standard for all of the banks. The financial analysis makes detailed financial analysis of the projects. For the second team, research team works for the projects to evaluate the project in terms of economical condition, market supply and demand. One of the important difference from other also talk with the technical staff. Can you?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. And also this engineering team also responsible for the environmental and social impact assessment. They are also going through the existing environmental and social documents. And also they are, of course, very well know the international standards such as IFC performance standards, World Bank safeguards, other international standards. And time to time, as you may know, the Turkish domestic environmental and social regulation doesn't fulfill the requirement of the international standards. In this case, our engineering team also comes to the picture and make a gap analysis and require the investor to prepare and make a report and to fulfill this gap. which means that we are also supporting our investors to reach out the international standards. And also these teams also responsible for monitoring of these projects. We are not just giving away the money to the investors. We are closely following the investment period, not only financially, but also environmental and social terms. We are closely following and reporting to the internally reporting to the committee, and also we are reporting to the fund providers. Next slide, please. One of the important area for financing is renewable energy financing for TSKB. Approximately 38% of our loan portfolio is going to the energy financing. So when we look at the Turkish structure, Turkish energy production structure, last 15 years was very important years, because in 2004, a feed-in tariff regulation was released to support the renewable energy financing. But at the beginning of this support mechanism, the prices were set in Turkish lira terms. And since most of the investments are in foreign exchange terms, the private sector was hesitant to make these kind of investments. Then in 2008, the feed-in tariff mechanism has been revised and the prices were set in US dollar terms. And then the investment appetite increases very rapidly. At that time, the installed capacity of Turkey was approximately at the level of 40,000 megawatts. As we came to this year, the installed capacity has been reached approximately 100,000 megawatts, which is more than 2.5 times. And also at that time, the portion of the renewable energy was almost zero. But when we came to this year, the installed capacity, which can be seen on the right-hand side of the slide, the installed capacity of the renewable energy reached more than 50%, approximately 52%, which is a quite achievement for Turkish electricity sector. As you may know, the capacity utilization rates of the renewable energies are less than the thermal sector, so that the production figures, when we look at the production figures, approximately 1/3 of the production coming from renewable energy, the remaining are from thermal sources. Next slide, please. For the renewable energy financing, TSKB's outstanding risk is to approximately 252 projects, 5,192 megawatt of installed capacity. I just wanted to highlight here that at the start of the funding for renewable energy, we mostly financed hydroelectric projects in 2008 to 2014. At that time, almost 90% of the funding were going to the hydroelectric investments, because the hydroelectric potential was huge, and there was a opportunity for investments. But in time, most of the capacity or the potential has been already used, so that most of the feasible project has been done. So when you look at the right-hand side of the table, the portion of the hydroelectric power is decreasing in years. But on the other hand, the portion of the wind and solar investments are increasing, and especially for the wind power projects, the percentage has been reached to 36 point. This is not only the case for TSKB, this is only for almost all of the banks in Turkey. The similar structure can be seen in this in Turkey. Next slide, please.
Mr. Coskun, can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Okay, please do.
Thanks to thematic finance structure, TSKB has already reached 90% of SDG-linked loans. Our future target is to keep this ratio at the same level. Additionally, our aim is to provide $8 billion to the SDG-linked project until 2030. This is the target, but our target is to increase this amount. But at least $8 billion will be targeted. As you can see, we are closely following our portfolio, and for example, this year our management told that we are not going to finance any more coal projects, and also we are we are not so keen to finance mining projects. We are not dealing with these kind of projects. We will be always looking for SDG investments, SDG related investment as a development bank. That completes my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much to Mr. Coskun on that presentation earlier. We already have a few questions up here, Mr. Coskun. So there's a question from Ms. Roslawati Matlazim. What is the average processing time to approve financing within TSKB?
Yeah, of course, it depends on the type of the project and also prepared the investors. If they have a good feasibility study, and if they also managed preliminary environmental and social impact assessment, then the evaluation process takes less than a month.
Okay, less than a month. So thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Great. So do we have any more questions? If not, actually, presentation from Mr. Coskun was very comprehensive in terms of how a financial institution can turn into a sustainable focused DFI. And Mr. Coskun has actually provided us not only in terms of what TSKB has done, but also in terms of how what are the construct or the hierarchy of the sustainability management committee, which the structure of sustainability committee within the organization. So everything has been presented to us so that we will be able to learn from this particular experience from TKSB from Turkey, and we will be able to implement it here in Malaysia. We have one more question. Based on your sharing on the strong risk management just now, can you share how TSKB developed your human capital? Right.
Oh.
So,
that's a challenge, but we have a very good application. We have how can I say, we have very good relations with the universities, and we are always looking for youth or newly graduated students, so that we visit most of the universities and we have sustainability days, and we are making some kind of a studies there, and we are presenting TSKB to attract the new talents. To keep the talents, it's very hard. Of course, we always look for the talented person, and also the other companies also look for the talented person. We do our best, but it's a hard job. But I think we are very successful to keep our talents. But some of our colleagues going to other companies or to abroad. For example, last year we lose 3 staff to FMO, Netherlands. They directly went to the FMO, for example. But it's also our proud to send these guys to the good companies. So it's the same structure as other banks.
Fantastic. Thank you. I hope that clarifies for Ms. Roslawati. There's another question, Mr. Coskun. How could you please share how deals are made bankable with foreign borrowers?
So can you repeat the question? I couldn't catch it.
So could you please share how deals are made bankable with foreign borrowers? So if the borrower is foreign, right? How do you go through the entire?
I omit to mention that the TSKB is only active in the domestic market.
Okay.
We are bounded to finance only in Turkey. It's not legally bounded, but the policy is to finance the investments in Turkey, because as development bank, we are using the treasury guarantee, and we are placed as a policy bank. We are just only active in the domestic market. We have only one project abroad, but this project was done at Turkish investors in Georgia, at which they were going to install a hydropower project, and they were going to sell this electricity directly to Turkey. That's the one example, but other than that, we don't have any other example of investment outside the Turkey. But in Turkey, the investors, the type of the investors is not so important. It can be foreign investor or the domestic investor, but if they are making these investments in Turkey, they are all eligible.
Great. There's another question. Looks like you're very popular, Mr. Coskun, today.
Thank you.
So there's a question from Mohammed Hafiz. He asks, most DFI offered financial assistance such as moratorium during this pandemic times, in Malaysia at least. So what is your expectation or other initiatives of financial assistance that TSKB provided during this pandemic, and what would you do if this pandemic and climate prolong, or is it business as usual in Istanbul and Turkey?
Of course, it's not a business as usual. COVID-19 pandemic was a very extraordinary situation. We tried to help our clients in 2 ways. The first is to give consultancy service. The level of the prices of the consultancy service is not so high in TSKB. We are not aiming to earn money from the consultancy service. The main aim is to share the experience, so that we shared our experience to our clients to help their financial projections. That's one point. And in the consultancy side, for the financial side, of course, we help our investors or the clients to prolong the maturities of the loan. If they are needed to prolong the maturity, then we help them. And sometimes, of course, not sometimes, we also get some also funding from DFI, especially from Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, the COVID line. We also give additional working capital to the companies that are needing during this period. So as a development bank, as a mission bank, our aim was to help the companies who are needing during the extraordinary time.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Coskun. We have two questions, and we're going to stop at the two questions. Otherwise, Mr. Coskun will have to be here for a very long time. So the first question that we have here is TSKB targets to provide USD 200 million in financing to support women employment. Can you share how it works and how it supports the economy? And also TSKB has also raised awareness through Green Swan platform. May you share how this awareness works through this platform?
Okay. For the first question, $200 million per year for the gender. In 2016, we presented our study related with the gender equality, and we closely work with Agence France Development to support gender-friendly companies. And we developed a tool to evaluate the company in terms of gender equality. And for the companies who are eager to work this issue, we applied this tool, and the criteria was to in this tool there was a point. There's a levels. If they are under the level of eligibility, then if they are planning to have an action plan to increase their score, then it became eligible. But in this case, we closely followed the action plan. And in this situation, in this condition, we fund them. The second will be, they can be already gender-friendly company, then we directly give the money to the company, and also we also require them to make some additional impact or additional study. That was the main idea, and it was also then accepted by the IBRD. We also presented to IBRD. During the study with IBRD, the tool was developed little different than the AFT tool, but the main idea was still the same. We applied the tool. If they are higher than the criteria set, then it's directly eligible. If lower than the criteria, then the action plan is required. For the Green Swan platform, it was an idea coming from our sustainability committee. We are still working on it because it's not completed yet. The idea is to create a platform which consists of both academicians, industries, and NGOs, and to create a working platform and trainings and etc. To improve the understanding and the approach of the Turkish industry and the society. But still we are going on it. It's not completed, but it's an idea to be realized. So I hope next year we are going to share the results, what we have done related to Green Swan. But so far we don't have a full results at the moment.
Okay, so that's actually a question. Both those questions are actually from one person. We have one last question, Mr. Coskun, and this question comes in a few parts actually. how do TSKB develop its internal staff talents to be well versed in sustainable financing? I think this is something to do with culture as well. Organization culture. Any scheduled training programs, any external consultants involved, and also how do you retain such talents?
Thank you. Very good question. For the trainings, we created a internal training program in two modules. One is the first level to share the main points of sustainability, and the second module was related with the detailed or advanced level. These are the training program. For the external trainings, as you already know, that we are closely working with IBRD, European Investment Bank, IFC, EBRD, and of course they have various training programs and various studies which they are sharing, and we are also benefiting from their opportunities.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Coskun. So that brings us, I know there's a lot of participants out here who want to ask a lot more questions, right? I don't think we have the time, and we have to keep time as well. It's already 4:20 in Malaysia. And I would like to extend my sincerest appreciation to Mr. Coskun for spending his time with us and sharing with us in very detailed and comprehensively how TSKB has actually achieved and implemented their sustainability program. And hopefully we can invite Mr. Coskun next year as well to see the progress of Green Swan platform as well, right? And we do sincerely appreciate TSKB for allowing Mr. Coskun to be with us today as well. We are truly impressed as well, and we hope we can implement what TSKB has implemented. Ladies and gentlemen, we have had sharing from global perspectives to perspectives from India, Turkey, Canada, and the United States, across all the way up till Africa as well. The main objective of today's webinar is to learn and share worldwide DFI practices and experiences during and after the pandemic, including how development finance institutions can ensure a sustainable growth through sustainable financing. We hope that DFI executives in Malaysia and across the world will take back the presentations today and become champions of sustainable financing in their own organization. ADFIM will continue to organize programs and training to empower member institutions towards achieving the SDGs, not only for the agreement signed by Malaysia, but truly for our future generations. You will definitely look forward to more working groups and more engagements with auctusESG, CENDB, World Bank, as well as all the other international organizations in the near future, whether it be this year or if physically it'll be next year. As the Secretary General of ADFIM, I would like to extend my sincerest appreciation to all the speakers, to World Bank Group, to CENDB, auctusESG, and TSKB for their support. I would also like to extend my gratitude to Mr. Ilhami Öztürk and Mr. Mehmet Rashid and the entire ADFIMI team in Istanbul that helped us to organize the program today as well. Finally, I would like to thank all participants for actively engaging with us and staying with us until the end of the day. We hope the program was not too tight. It was did not give you screen fatigue. We really did try to ensure that the program wasn't too tight and too formal to provide you with the screen fatigue, and it's a little bit more relaxed so that we can have better learning and better sharing throughout the day. So until we meet again, we do hope that this program today was very good. Until we meet again, thank you very much and see you in future events. And do keep in touch. And before I say salam and good evening, our entire session today will be available to you on our Facebook, ADFIM Facebook, as well as our ADFIM YouTube. It was actually live telecast today, the entire day from 8:30 in the morning today until right now. So if you really need to go back and look at the explanations from our speakers the entire day today, it will be on our Facebook as well as our YouTube. Please do subscribe, because from here onwards, we will have sharings through YouTube as well as Facebook. If you don't receive emails from us on our programs, definitely you will get our notification on Facebook and YouTube if you subscribe and you follow our Facebook and YouTube. So please do go ahead to our YouTube as well as our Facebook social media and click the subscribe and follow button. Thank you very much. Until we meet again, appreciate your attendance. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh, and a very good evening. Thank you to everyone.